Hey everyone, this is Shake, and in this video today we'll talk about Replace the Queen, the newest awakening units that is also sniper units. So there is a couple things to talk about her, and we'll talk about maybe the best way to kind of use her, some kind of gear option that you can use, and how she fares within PvE as well as PvP contents from my experience of using her within Korean server. Anyways, let's jump into the video and talk about Replace the Queen and everything about her. So overall, Queen is very solid units, I would say. She's a 5-cost sniper unit that can also hit aerial units as well, and she covers a large range, and she does a lot of AoE attack with her special skills as well as ultimate skill. And she can actually charge up her skills pretty fast because her passive skills allows her to get additional 15% skill haste. Anything dies within the field that will give her the passive stacks at the 15%, and every other unit dies additionally. Since then, she is able to also get the -1 seconds to her ultimate skills. This allows her to be able to push out the maximum skill haste pretty easily, and she is able to spam her skills even faster. And her ultimate skill actually does a decent amount of damage. You know what, I would actually say her ultimate does pretty good damage in PvE contents. Not to mention that her special skills are also very good ways to stun enemies in the AoE areas, and her passive, the enhanced attack, will also allow to stun enemies as well as give them a skill seals to delay their skill usage as well. So that was a mouthful skill description. I mean, all this character that's coming out in the future, it tends to have a lot of skill description. So what I'm trying to say is her skill kits are very solid and pretty good. Now the only downside she really has with her skill kit is the basically kind of enhanced attack and the stun parts, because stun doesn't work on bosses. Not to mention skill seals she does not work on the bosses as well. So this makes her kind of limited into a lot of places within PvE, but regardless, I think she still has potential in some spots, and I just think she just needs a lot of enemies within the field to see the maximum benefits. For contents like Shadow Hole, I think she is pretty good, and like I said, she's a 5-cost unit. So lower the cost is, it usually means a lot better. Now if she was 6 cost, I would not give her a second chance in my opinion, but because she is a 5-cost unit, I think she is still very solid units for PvE. It's just that, you know, I think there's a lot better option right now, like Awaken Amy in Korean server. She is pretty much a better version of her within PvE, I think. But regardless, I think Replace the Queen is still really fun units and really good units to use. It's just that as you go on, you will definitely use other units over Replace the Queen. But that is pretty much short information of her. Now we actually go into the content sections and talk about her PvE usage as well as PvP usage. Now, when it comes to PvE contests, I think Replace the Queen had a pretty good run within the Korean server. I used to use her quite often, especially early Shadow Hole days before Amy came out. And when the Amy got buffed, then I stopped using Replace the Queen pretty much. But until then, I still use Replace the Queen quite a lot to go through some of the contents. It's really fun to see Replace the Queen just goes berserk and just keep stunning enemies and doing ultimate skills every like 5-10 seconds. And just burn through enemies like nothing. It is pretty fun to see. And not to mention, combined with the King, with the Blue Bridge ship, it becomes pretty chaotic, but it works pretty well. It's actually really fun to see. Now, some other content that I can remember used her quite often was Challenge Dungeon as well. And Challenge Dungeon 3, to get a 3-star, I used her with some other units, and it was pretty successful, so I used it there. Another PvE content that you can definitely use her right now for you as well is, I think it's a Tyrant Sword. You can definitely use her to fight against that boss. She can take down the initial ranger units that comes within the boss right away, along with the cutting, so those two can take them out pretty easily to buy you some time and able to move forward with it. That is pretty much it for PvE content. Like I said, those skill seal and stun doesn't really work on the bosses, and when she loses that ability, then her belly drops quite a lot, I think. Since her passive skills are all about getting kills or your units are dying, which is not that useful against the bosses, so yeah, That's why the replacer queen is probably not the best unit against it. Now, we don't know if there's an infinite wave mode coming, whenever that's coming. I think queen might have pretty big potential because I think those enemies should be able to get stunned. And I mean, there's probably better units like Amy, because Amy is also really good at doing a lot of AoE damage. But I think queen definitely has some potential for some future content whenever there's going to be a lot of enemies you have to fight against. So we'll see what happens in the future, but it's not too bright. But like I said, replacing queen is still 5 cost units once again, so that's always a good thing. And I think she might be able to get buffed in the future. Who knows? I mean, king got buffed, so why not replace the queen? Who knows? But that is pretty much it about the replace queen's usage in my experience with the Korean server. And I think she is pretty decent unit as long as you're not fighting against the bosses. Now, when it comes to PvP contents, I think Replacer Queen had a really solid run with the Korean server, and I still think she got some potentials, but Korean server wise, it is really hard to use a Queen right now. The main reason is because Evolve 1 hasn't got banned at all within Korean server. Coffin 6 did, but not the Evolve 1. And Evolve 1 is pretty much the hardest counter that Replacer Queen could face. She will not be able to scratch Evolve 1 that well, and Evolve 1 will just melt her easily. If you don't watch out, the enhanced attack Evolve 1 does will just melt the Replacer Queen like nothing. And you're just gonna need some different strategy if you really want to use a queen within PvP. Because before early days, before all this like defender and stuff, the queen along with the Nayubin, along with the supporter, with the Libya operator, which what you should be probably running within the C server right now, was really performing well. It took a lot of gear requirements, of course, but once you had every set pieces and your deck, the first hand looked perfect, then your match was going on and there was not much counter that you can usually throw out to beat the setup. Now there's a king who can throw these punches that will shred the queen's HP like nothing. And then, like I said, Evolve 1 exists, and units like Overflow does exist, which could rush it into your backline and trying to hit the queen. And there's also Spira and many other different characters right now. So I think belly for Replacer Queen is a lot lower, because there's more and more enemies that's not, you can't stun them that well, so that's the bad side of it. But then again, I think Replacer Queen always got potential against the striker enemies, and whenever striker enemies are strong, the Replacer Queen can melt them pretty quickly. For example, if anyone is still using Yuna with the C server, I'm not too sure, Queen can take her out pretty easily. So it's pretty sad because, like I said, Queen is very solid units in terms of skill kit. It's just that there is so many strong enemies that makes the snipers really hard to use, and the Queen is pretty much the result of that. So we'll have to see how things will turn out, but hoping maybe she'll come back around. Maybe they need to give her some additional boosts like a king. Maybe, let's say, every time she kills units or units dies, her passive will trigger, or gives her invincibility buff instead. I think that sounds maybe a little bit fair. Maybe like it be like a Nile, maybe give like 2 seconds. Maybe that's fair. I don't know. But I think she definitely needs something if she wants to fight against all these defenders right now. The point I'm trying to say is I think Queen definitely needs some adjustments to be really good with the PvP Korean server. The C server, yes, Evolve 1 does exist, but Evolve 1 does seems to be getting banned in C server, so maybe that's the one less stress for you, because the banned Evolve 1 will be really hard to use in my opinion. Well, I've never faced the banned Evolve 1 to be honest with you, so I can't tell you my first-hand experience. But even when the Evolve 1 is out, you have to do it with the king. You guys got the king as a buff states, and the buffed king can throw those punches every time whenever their enemies die. Yeah, kings get buffed, and kings can throw these punches. Then those punches will pierce through defenders and attack the queen directly, which does a lot of damage. Not to mention, there is no like a Serena crew operator, which is one of the way to counter king to certain stabs, and since you guys, like I said, don't have that, it's going to be really hard to face against the king and try to win against it. But I think there's much better snipers coming out for PvP in the future, and the queen is definitely not one of them. And I think queen, like I said, probably needs some buffs like king did. I think 2-second invincibility every time something dies might be good enough. I don't know, maybe I actually don't think that's enough. That's probably really situational, but having that will be probably better than not having it, so we'll see. But that's my final thoughts on Queen. I think her skill tests are just really solid, but there's too many strong defenders and other units to counter her pretty easily, so there's gonna have to be some adjustment to her survivability sections to make it a lot more stronger. Now, if you made it this far, most likely you are still interested in using Queen. So the gear option you can use for Queen is pretty simple. I think the best one you can definitely go for in general is the Maze cooldown set. You can use this in any PvE contents. Not to mention you must have to use this within the PvP contents, because to maximize her skill haste, to spam her ultimates, and a special skill faster is always better. So pretty simple character when it comes to gearing up. Now the next section is different usage for PvE, which is the Danger Clothes. With the Danger Clothes, you probably want to use her with some striker damage set options. I sometimes use a Blaze. Smite is not a bad choice either to gamble with some crit damage, and the Spirit also not a bad choice either. But that is pretty much what I can talk about the gear section for the Queen. Like I said, she's a very straightforward character. Whatever you use, I think you'll be very successful if you go with either of the setup I ask you to. And like I said, in general, cooldown set for sure. And for other sections like Danger Clothes, you probably want to use the striker damage setup. So my final thoughts on Queen. The Queen, in terms of design and aesthetic, like the way she looks and everything, she is amazing. So it is pretty sad that I don't get to use her that much these days, because there's much better units and I just don't really have a space or slots for her to be used. A lot of cases I think I'll just use Amy, or since the rearm of the Shout-In, I'll definitely use a Shout-In in a lot of situations where the Queen kind of sits in the back and just waiting to be used one day. So maybe Queen will get buffed down the road someday, but I just think she kind of deserves some minor buff to make her more usable. I think within PvE they can just stop ignoring all this like stun immunity as well as skill seal immunity on the bosses. I think Queen can definitely go and give some different debuff if they want to make her into really good units. But we'll see what happens. I think there's gonna be only brighter future with Queen than where she is at right now, because I think if I have to be harassed, she seems to be at the rock bottom with the Queen server, and I think there's only going to be a positive changes for her in the future. But that is pretty much it for this video, guys. Once again, thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time in my next video. Bye bye.